23rd of December, 2024. We're here to correct some language in the ARPA resolution that we passed in one of our previous meetings. And we're also going to address Michael Billingsley's letter to help get a AmeriCorps person as an assistant, which is paid for through a grant, approved, so he can apply for that. So let's start with the ARPA funds. Do we have, can we have a motion, Peter, or you're looking at the document?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We have a resolution that was sent to us from League of Cities and Towns.
So just to give a little background on this.
We need a motion first.
Oh, okay.
So I move that we adopt this resolution. Do I need to read the whole thing into the record? Which I think was before.
Why don't we?
Well, we're going to attach that whole thing to the minutes.
All right, so we will attach this entire resolution. It's a whole bunch of whereas clauses, and there's really only one resolved clause at the end. And the resolved clause is that the following allocation of SLFRF funding to fund government services under the replacing lost public sector revenue spending category as follows: to expend SLRF funds in the amount of $180,881.64 for the purpose of municipal workforce retention to pay for payroll expenses for the period July 1st, 2023 through April 1st, 2024. Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
There's discussion.
Yeah,
There is discussion. Sorry.
This might be Bram's moment to offer context.
There is discussion.
To give context for this, in reviewing the minutes, it seems that we want to make sure that the bulk of the ARPA money that was left over is formally allocated properly, because if it's not, the government can take the funds back. So just in an abundance of caution, I had the key person at the league who's in charge of this draw up what she thinks how the language should read. So that's what this is. And to your point regarding the discrepancy in the numbers, I think that what it has to do with this is the ARPA funds are kept in an account where all interest hits at the end of the month. And I think it was just the number that I was reading off didn't include interest for that month. This is what it's maybe a $90 discrepancy in the numbers.
I see there's no difference in the wording of the resolve clause that we adopted back in October.
No, this is, once again, I don't know if was the 181 mentioned in the clause, because I thought it was.
Yes.
I thought, well, for whatever reason, I think we should just defer to her in terms of her comfort level with stuff.
Yeah.
I had her review the minutes and she said, why don't you do this?
Yeah, on the October 28th minutes, if anyone wants to look, it had $180,790.99. So it was almost $90 difference, which sounds like it is the interest. Yeah. But the rest of the wording that Dan used in making the motion at the time was,
then maybe we're just, I'm just doing this.
Abundance of caution is fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's $180,000, and I would hate to see us for some reason, some technical reason, have it clawed back. So, and I had her review the language, and she seemed to want to do this. So I'm deferring to her on this.
And I have a question. Do we need to formally have this supersede the last motion made about this, or does simply making another motion about it automatically supersede it?
I'm not a parliamentarian, but I think that this, I don't know that we need to retract the other motion. I think we can just.
It's the same. issue. Yeah, I don't know either. I'm not a parliamentarian either, but I would think that
Nothing was mentioned about that from the league, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think just, it's clear, it should be clear from the minutes that our intent is simply to clarify and make sure that we did it right, so.
That's it.
Yes. Okay, we have the vote and second, we have the motion and second. So all those in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, it's passed.
Carl, on this resolution, there's an attest with signature lines. I don't know how many, or all of us, or just one of us.
I'll put it in the yellow folder. If we could get at least 3 signatures on it, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm gonna be back Monday.
Okay,
Is that good enough for me?
I think that's okay.
Okay.
I mean, are we,
And I'm here, so.
you're here, and Rose, can you sign it?
I can be in on the 27th.
Okay, that's great. That would be great, yeah.
Okay, that'll work. Yep. So we'll actually sign it then. The alternative would be to give Peter the authorization to sign it for the board. But I think it's better if we have 3 signatures.
Yeah, I think for this, if we have 3.
Yep. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Michael Billingsley's request for the application for a AmeriCorps assistant. And if you could tell us a few things, Michael, about what, I mean, we've seen the document that you wrote up. Thank you for that. Just an overview so anyone listening can understand.
Sure. I'm following through on a 7 or 8 month process, maybe longer than that, attempting to have an assistant because I have, although I have a lot of skills in emergency management, there are certain things that I don't do well and which are related to some disabilities. And so I've been trying to go through various agencies to find an assistant who would sort of step in and help me deal with some of the more difficult stuff. And one of the things that became apparent when approached by Serve Vermont is that which is the state's contractor to AmeriCorps Vista, is that they could actually tailor a position to act as both a helper for me and for the town in general, especially where we're looking at flood resilience and future hazard planning and preparation and community education, things like that. So I looked at what their requirements for such a position would be in terms of what they want to accomplish with an AmeriCorps volunteer, and wrote a letter of intent which matches my needs and theirs. And what would happen next is if the town signed if the select board signed this letter of intent, then our next step is I would submit it to Serve Vermont tomorrow, actually, and then they would continue to look for the person to fill this job. They don't have that person right now. And so and they have actually recently acquired 5 new positions. In other words, they have to be funded first before they can offer them to a town. There are lots of people who want this position, but they have actually put Plainfield at the top of the list. So we're in a high likelihood of getting it once we find an appropriate volunteer. And it's actually not a volunteer position. It's $31,000, which is the $25,000 stipend that they would automatically offer, plus a $6,000 scholarship to the town of Plainfield to make up what would be normally our match. So the total of $31,000 is being requested here. And I would also use this opportunity to say that we are looking for energetic, well-organized, and capable people who might want to be an AmeriCorps worker. We have been encouraged to find such a person in and around Plainfield. And basically, if we found the right person, we would be offering them a job through AmeriCorps. And the last wrinkle, which is housing, is offered in general through the AmeriCorps, Vermont AmeriCorps office itself. It has housing now recently made available on what was the former Vermont College campus in Montpelier. However, they hope that we could offer a volunteer something more local and perhaps a little bit more luxurious than a dorm room, in which case we also would be talking with, and I've already mentioned this as a matter of fact, with Goddard and also with the local community to see if housing could be found that might be a little better and closer. So those are everything I can think of.
Yeah, Rose?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering about outgoing seniors at Twinfield, if they've been asked, thinking that they already have housing in all likelihood in town or in the next town over. And
That's a great idea.
that might be like a nice gap year moment for someone interested in public service.
Yeah, it's a great.
That may well be true, but I really need somebody competent in administrative assistance. In other words, somebody who knows how to, I mean, I'm not saying they won't be there at Twinfield, and it's a good point that you raise, but I'm also looking for someone who would be an adult, in other words, not a minor, who would be an adult who would be able to go and enter households and do interviews and things like that on their own. So I am envisioning someone who is 18 years of age and older, and just because of the importance of that.
Is it a permanent position?
It's a 1-year position, and it has a option to renew with a slightly higher match. In other words, the match goes up to 8,000 on the second year.
And is this individual who joins, are they a salaried employee?
They are called a Vista member, and the only requirement that they have made in terms of our coverage is that when they are acting in the name of the town of Plainfield, that we provide the insurance. All other contractual and withholding is done through AmeriCorps itself.
But in terms of the logistics of the payroll, I have to sort of coordinate that. Do you have any idea? Is there somebody at AmeriCorps who can explain it, or?
Someone at AmeriCorps could explain it. There is some explanatory language that I can pass on, but the important thing from their perspective is that we quickly develop with that volunteer a time and an activity log that can be used to document their efforts so that they can.
And they would be a part-time employee?
None of that I can answer. They're not working for Plainfield, they're working for AmeriCorps.
I see.
They're an AmeriCorps employee. They are not a
You mentioned insurance, Michael. Is the insurance like a liability insurance? It's not a health insurance, is it?
No, it's not a health insurance. As a matter of fact, I did mention in the letter of intent that they have requested also that the sponsoring agency or town would set aside a $500 fund that would be used in emergencies should the AmeriCorps person, for instance, need to return home in a family health emergency or something like that. And so that $500 fund I'm going to be adding to the emergency management budget this coming year. So that is all we're asked financially to provide from the point of view of medical care, is to have that emergency fund.
And the town clerk office doesn't sound like they have direct responsibility for this person. It would be the emergency management department.
That's correct. And
Okay.
it specifically says in the letter of intent that the emergency management director is the supervisor. If I cease to be the emergency management director for one reason or another, my successor would then become the supervisor.
Okay. Any other questions? Peter, Rose?
I had one on the, in the language of the your letter of intent, Will. It, in the larger paragraph, the second paragraph says they would support emergency management and document the impacts of flood of 24, as well as to provide planning and administrative help for both the EMD and the group planning village adaptation to future climate change. Which group is that?
That is a group that still has not, it's now called the Village Expansion Group, but I'm a member of that. In other words, I'm asking.
Okay, that was sort of where I was headed with it.
Yeah.
So this is the NDA, the folks working on the NDA?
Yes, but supporting my work there. In other words, what I know is that if there is someone working with me, that they would help me log and track and support the work as I would do, but basically as an extension of myself.
I guess my question is because there's been no town vote yet on whether or not the town is supporting that initiative.
Which is why
It's an independent group at this point, so.
Right, and that's why I didn't specifically give it a title.
Okay.
Whatever that group turns out to be, I will probably be involved with, just like Bram and Erica are, and Carl. And so if we give it a final name, if the townspeople vote on it, if it becomes official, it would still be that same work. I'm going to be expecting that this person is available full-time. So also I may assign them to do work on behalf of that group if it proves helpful. There's lots of decisions to be made on the ground when that person is actually available. I want to make sure that my own specific administrative needs are met. And then if there was extra time, then to give that person additional priorities.
Would they also be involved in working on what happens to the green space after buyouts?
If I am, yes, potentially. I'm not saying they'd be a decision maker. They would be gathering information, helping keep track of stuff, and becoming, like working with Arian, for instance, to keep track of what the buyout progress is with each of these people so that we know which houses will actually be in the green space and which ones will be removed. Just having that kind of basic support.
I have another question. So I'm thinking that there's still some things that the board may want to review. We're right now we're talking about an application to get a volunteer or a employee, if you will, Vista, AmeriCorps volunteer. Is the select board going to have another discussion about this once somebody's selected and we start talking about details?
I don't know if that would be needed. I suppose anybody who's curious to have that happen, it could.
Okay. Where would that person be working?
At the Emergency Operations Center in Town Hall.
And okay, I can see an issue, little bit of an issue there, just because that's the reception area is where you're talking about. So I'm not sure. I'd like to have another say at that. Because we do have offices in the office building.
This is my accommodation for having a disability. In other words, it's sort of like me paying for my own ramp. And so in this sense, where I am is where that person is likely to be, but they may work independently. The relationship with the EOC and Town Hall, as it's been worked out with Keith at least, is that when I need to walk in there and work, I do. And
that's no problem. It's just the space required for yet another person could be an issue. It's something I'd like to talk about again, that's all.
Sure. Well, there's one table there that's sort of permanent, along with a printer and excuse me, some office support equipment. And that doesn't expand because this person is coming in. That would be their workspace, the same as it is my workspace. They also potentially could be working with me in my dining room. I mean, I'm saying this person is really supporting me in my work environment.
Well, the other thing I think about is safety for if it's a person who's by themselves in the opera house, working alone. I just would feel better, I think, having them in a place with this other people. So that was just another thought.
Okay, they would be an adult. I mean, in the sense that.
No, I understand. Yep. But it's just something that occurred to me that might be an issue.
Well, let's definitely plan to talk about it again then.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
So how do we feel, board members, about going ahead with the request for application for this person?
I'm comfortable making a motion in support.
Okay.
I move that we support Michael Billingsley's application for an AmeriCorps service member, tasked with there's a there's a long list of things they're tasked with. But,
Yes,
as a personal assistant to the emergency coordinator, um, as well as future disaster mitigation in town.
I suggest you amend that because emergency management coordinator is actually a different person, a different job description. It's emergency management director.
Okay, amended to the emergency management director.
do we have a second?
I would second that. I think we have a letter of intent that needs to be signed, and I guess it needs to be signed today if you're gonna present it tomorrow, so we probably need to authorize me to sign it on behalf of the board since I'm the only one here.
I think we will. Let's vote first on the motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Hi,
And then we'll need a motion to allow Peter to sign on behalf of the board.
motion to allow Peter to sign on behalf of the board.
And I'll second that. Um, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's passed. I should also note that three of the five board members are here. The other two are away. So it was unanimous with the three that are present in both instances. Our next meeting is January 6th. I think that's all we had tonight.
One, thank you. Thing.
Did Bram have something?
Well, I just wanted to make the select board aware of my understanding of the new open meeting law is that although we're allowed to use Zoom, there has to be a physical space for people if they want to come to the meeting, which means that in future, there needs to be at least one person, willing to be either a select board member or, somebody from the municipal building be present to have the room open and so forth. So just going forward, I think everybody on the select board should be aware of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's been that way for a while.
I think so. And we appreciate you, Peter, for coming in to be representing the board in person. And thank you, Bram and Erica, for having the space there. Any other thoughts or comments?
Thank you all for getting this done in a timely fashion.
Yes, thank you. And we have a motion to adjourn.
Okay, before you adjourn, I just want to make everybody aware, unfortunately, the planning commission meeting is unfortunately scheduled at the same time as the select board meeting. It's in this room. The planning commission meeting is in this room. Select board is in town hall, but I'm sorry that I didn't spot that earlier. I could have had them change it, but I think that that's something to be aware of.
That's their warned public hearing.
That's their warned public hearing, and it's, in other words, somebody might ask you as a select board member, oh, are you gonna be doing the zoning stuff at your select board meeting? You're not.
Right.
That's a separate meeting, just so you're aware.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have we set to adjourn?
Yeah,
We'll need a motion.
can make a motion to adjourn this meeting of the select board, Monday, December 23rd.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all, and go back to your festivities. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, friends. Bye.
Signing out.
The recording?
Yes.